Their wedding day was supposed to be the grand beginning of a beautiful life together, a glittering celebration of love, with more than 100 guests watching them step into forever. But the truth was that Camila and Malik's story had been unfolding for decades, long before the flowers and the champagne, long before anyone ever saw them dressed in white. Their love had been written into the quiet corners of their childhood, carried into the storms of adolescence, tested by distance and ambition, and finally sealed beneath the California sky where they vowed to never let go. Camila and Malik grew up just a few doors apart in a suburban neighborhood outside Atlanta, Georgia, where the houses were lined with red brick facades, magnolia trees bloomed in spring, and the air carried both the comfort of tradition and the hum of progress. Their families were proud, rooted, and respected pillars in the community. Camila's parents owned a thriving catering business, while Malik's father was a professor and his mother a doctor. Both households believed in discipline, culture, and faith, and both found quiet joy in the knowledge that their children were growing up together like siblings, best friends, shadows that never left each other's side. From the time they were barely able to tie their shoes, Camila and Malik were inseparable. At age 5, they could already be found building castles out of cardboard boxes, staging adventures in the backyard, or chasing each other down the quiet streets until the evening cicadas sang. Camila was fearless. She climbed the tallest trees, jumped from swings mid-flight, and always dared Malik to keep up. Malik was quieter, thoughtful even as a boy, cautious in ways that made the adults nod approvingly. Where she was fire, he was calm water. Together they fit like two puzzle pieces, no one dared separate. Teachers noticed quickly how unusual their bond was. In kindergarten, when Camila grew restless and chattered too much, Malik would gently tap her arm, whispering a reminder to focus. In return, when Malik hesitated to answer a question in class, Camila would nudge him with a grin, whispering, "You've got this," until his confidence bloomed. Their parents often joked that one day they'd stand together at an altar. The children laughed it off back then, too young to understand what love could become. But those words lingered in the air, seeds planted in soil already fertile with connection. By the time they were 10, their bond was more than friendship, it was a partnership. They walked home together from school every day, their backpacks bouncing in rhythm. They shared secrets in whispers, like who they liked in class or what they dreamed of becoming when they grew up. Camila wanted to design dresses, the kind you see in magazines, she said, drawing sketches in her notebook. Malik wanted to build towers, bridges, and cities, though he didn't yet know the word architecture. Of course, childhood wasn't without its storms. They argued sometimes over games, over misunderstandings, over the silly pride children carry. But their fights never lasted. Once, after a particularly loud disagreement over who should be captain during a neighborhood soccer match, Camila ran home in tears. Malik showed up an hour later at her doorstep with a half-crushed wildflower in his hand and an awkward apology on his lips. She forgave him instantly, and from then on, their bond seemed unbreakable. Adolescence brought change, as it always does. Camila blossomed into the kind of girl people couldn't help but notice, her laughter bright, her style bold, her presence magnetic. Malik grew taller, his quiet confidence sharpening into something people respected, even envied. Classmates teased them constantly, calling them husband and wife or the power couple of the future. At first, they denied it with flushed cheeks and laughter, but secretly, both felt a warmth in their chests at the thought. The turning point came one summer evening when they were 16. They sat together on Camila's rooftop, a ritual they'd developed, sneaking up with blankets and sodas to watch the Georgia sunsets bleed orange and gold across the horizon. Camila, restless as always, kicked her shoes off and leaned back against the shingles. "Do you ever wonder what it would be like if we were more than this?" she asked suddenly, her voice barely louder than the wind. Malik froze. Of course he had wondered. He had thought about it endlessly, about her laugh, about how his days felt empty when she wasn't beside him, but he had never dared to speak it aloud. He turned to her, his heart pounding, and admitted softly, "Yeah, I think about it all the time. Silence hung between them for a heartbeat, then another, and then Camila leaned in, closing the gap with a kiss, gentle, tentative, the kind of kiss that didn't just mark the start of something new, but revealed what had always been there. That night, they left the rooftop no longer just best friends, but something deeper, something they both knew would shape their futures. Through high school, their love only deepened. They were inseparable at dances, study partners in late-night libraries, shoulders to cry on during heartbreaks and disappointments. They navigated jealousy, pressure, and the constant chatter of peers, but none of it shook them. When they walked across the stage at graduation, hand in hand, it was clear to everyone they were already a team, already writing the first chapters of a lifelong story. College, however, brought distance. Malik earned a scholarship to Georgia Tech, diving into architecture with a passion that consumed his nights. Camila, ever bold, pursued fashion design in New York City, where the lights were bright and the competition fierce. They promised to make it work. Every weekend, one of them flew across states, and when they couldn't, they spent hours on late-night calls. Malik would sketch buildings during lectures with Camila's face hidden in the margins. Camila would sew dresses while humming the songs Malik once played on his guitar. The distance wasn't easy. There were moments of doubt, moments when silence stretched too long, when jealousy whispered in their ears, when the temptation to give up loomed heavy. Once, after a particularly heated argument about missed calls and cancelled plans, they almost ended it. Camila cried herself to sleep in her tiny New York apartment, convinced the world was pulling them apart. But the next morning, Malik was on a flight, standing at her doorstep with tired eyes and flowers in his hands. "I'm not letting us go," he whispered. That night, they made a vow. No matter the miles, no matter the challenges, they would always choose each other. Years passed, and their careers began to blossom. Malik became known for his bold architectural design, sleek towers that seemed to touch the sky, bridges that looked like art. Camila carved her name into the fashion world, blending African-inspired patterns with modern elegance, her work celebrated on runways. Despite the chaos of ambition, their love only grew stronger, rooted in the years of loyalty and friendship that had always bound them. Malik proposed in California's Napa Valley, a place Camila had dreamed of visiting. Under a canopy of stars, at a private vineyard dinner, he knelt with trembling hands and pulled out a ring unlike any other, a diamond set in gold engraved with symbols of unity and eternity. His voice cracked as he said, "I've loved you before I even knew what love was. You're my home. You're my forever." Camila's tears fell before the words left her lips. Yes, the months that followed were a whirlwind of planning. They chose a breathtaking estate in Big Sur, overlooking cliffs that dropped into the endless Pacific. Camila poured herself into the details, the dress embroidered with cultural patterns, the music that blended tradition and modernity, the flowers that would line the aisle. Malik cared less about the specifics. His eyes stayed fixed on the moment he would finally see her walk toward him. The day arrived bathed in golden sunlight. Guests gasped as the courtyard bloomed with white roses, as waves crashed below at a rhythm that felt like fate itself. Malik stood at the altar in an ivory suit, his heart pounding, as though he was still that boy on Camila's rooftop, waiting for her to speak. And then the doors opened, and time stopped. Camila appeared radiant, her gown shimmering, her smile trembling with emotion. Her father held her arm tightly as he walked her down the aisle, pausing at the altar to look at Malik for a long, silent moment before nodding his blessing. Their vows were raw, unpolished, and utterly true. Camila promised to always choose him through triumph and despair. Malik promised that she had been his dream long before he knew it, that she was, and would always be, his home. When the officiant declared them husband and wife, Malik kissed her as though the world itself depended on it, and the courtyard erupted in cheers. The reception glowed with warmth. Inside a glass pavilion lit by hundreds of candles, music and laughter swirled. Guests feasted, glasses clinked, speeches spilled over with tears and joy. Camila and Malik danced, twirled, and stole secret moments in corners, whispering promises only they could hear. At one point, they slipped away, standing hand in hand beneath the stars. "Can you believe this is us?" Camila whispered. Malik smiled. "I've believed it all my life." Then came the surprise. Camilla's father announced to gift a private helicopter waiting on the estate's helipad, ready to lift them into the sky. Guests rushed outside, cheering as Camila and Malik climbed aboard. They paused for one last photo, framed by the California sunset. As the helicopter lifted, the estate shrank below them. The ocean stretched infinite, the stars just beginning to prick the velvet sky. Camila leaned her head against Malik's shoulder, his hand warm around hers. "It feels like we're flying into forever," she whispered. Malik kissed her forehead. "That's because we are." Above the waves, above the cliffs, above the noise of the world, they saw their lives stretched out like the horizon, endless, beautiful, unbreakable. For them, this wasn't just a wedding. It was the continuation of a love story written since childhood, a promise sealed not just in vows, but in years of laughter, tears, and unwavering choice. And as the helicopter carried them into the night, they knew with unshakable certainty that whatever storms came, whatever trials lay ahead, they would always return to each other, because theirs was not just a romance, it was destiny.